The message from presidential candidates who supported former Empire star Jussie Smollett is that regardless of whatever happened, they say it should not detract from this.
We know in America that bigoted and biased attacks are on the rise in a serious way.
Kamala Harris agrees. She wrote this: "We must speak the truth. Hate crimes are on the rise in America." Just last year, the FBI released statistics that revealed a 17% increase in the number of hate crimes in America. Smollett is hardly the only hoax perpetrated on the public in the name of gaining the aura of what is now referred to as victimhood chic, or convincing the public that Trumpism leads to bigotry. Here are just a few of the examples of similar acts since President Trump was elected. Indiana, Hitler references and gay slurs spray painted on St. David's Episcopal Church right after the election. Trump backers were blamed, but it turned out that it was the organist at the church. He was a gay man who said that he was fearful about the outcome of the election, and he wanted others to, quote, "be scared with me." In New York, 18-year-old Yamiz Sawade shocked the city in 2016 with a terrible story about Trump supporters who had screamed at her on the subway and tried to rip off her hijab. 2 weeks later, she admitted she had made the whole thing up. And in Michigan, when graffiti saying KKK and leave N-word kept showing up over the course of a month at Eastern Michigan University, it turned out that it was coming from a former African-American student who had gone there. And, of course, the recent Covington High School boys, who Nathan Phillips claimed were attacking 4 black individuals on the plaza in Washington, D.C. But then the tape later revealed that it was actually the opposite. Members of the Black Israelites were, in fact, taunting the boys, calling them incest babies, among other things. My next guest has written extensively about hate crime statistics as they actually exist in this country. Robby Soave is the associate editor at Reason and the author of the upcoming book, Panic Attack: Young Radicals in the Age of Trump. Robby, good to have you here tonight.
Thank you for having me. Good to be here.
It's so important in these situations when there are these statements that are thrown out there as just sort of articles of faith that we drill down and we do take a look. What is actually going on in the country? Is it something to be concerned about? Is it epidemic? What have you found when it comes to hate crimes?
Absolutely. If you look at the data that the federal government, specifically the FBI, compiles relating to hate crimes, you find that, while yes, it would appear that there was a slight increase from 2016 to 2017, actually many more police agencies submitted data in the latter year. So what looks like a rise could just be the fact that now we have more municipalities being counted. I went all the way back to 1996 and found actually the number of hate crimes total overall was higher than even what they counted today, with all the additional police offices submitting data. If you look like in the long term, you see kind of fluctuations year to year, but they don't really connect to anything. They're just, it happens to do with who's submitting data and how good a job they're doing. It does not support this kind of narrative that the country is getting more frightening and more horrifying for black people, gay people,
what do you say, though, to those who would look at that and listen to you tonight and say, you know, a lot of these go unreported, that they hear so much anecdotally, and that they are concerned that these tensions that they trace back to the administration, that they are clearly on the rise out there? What do you say to them?
Well, I mean, certainly this is a country of, hundreds of millions of people. So, of course, there are, bad things happening every day. But anecdotes are not a substitute for a more holistic view of what's actually happening, of looking at the statistics, because, unfortunately, some of these anecdotes, like with Smollett, when you look at what actually happened, they don't stand up to scrutiny. We don't know what percentage of the total are like that, but I've investigated a lot of campus incidents that are often not criminal hate incidents, but just bias incidents, and many of them are unsolved. But the ones that do get solved, you do see quite often that there's more to the story, or it's outright fake, which is not to diminish, anyone who was the victim of something terrible, because it does happen.
Absolutely not. One of the other things that you read when you look into these numbers on hate crimes and what people are saying about it is that anti-Semitism is on the rise in this country. And we remember, obviously, the horrible killing at the synagogue in Pittsburgh. What do your numbers tell you about that?
Right. The media has been all over the statistic that there's been a 57% spike in anti-Semitic hate. This was from the Anti-Defamation League, but I looked specifically at the statistic. Actually, anti-Semitic violence was way down since Trump's election. The increase had to do with bomb threats made by a single person, a teenager who's crazy, who lived in Israel, that he made against Jewish institutions, which is terrible, don't get me wrong. But again, this is not... there's no evidence there that this is some actual increase in violence and that it has something to do with our current political situation. That's a drawing connections that the media sometimes does that are not warranted by what the actual data shows.
Interesting piece. Robbie, thank you very much. Good to have you back tonight.
My pleasure.